have worked with that. That's been kind of fun. So to continue our conversation and the continuing education hours and training is somebody who also works very closely with a lot of water resource districts and has worked closely with Gail, I know for sure. And so partly why we scheduled these two together. Levi Otis will be presenting about a history of water drainage and water management, and Ellingson is certainly a prominent name in that environment in North Dakota, probably in the last 10 or 12 years, most prominently. Levi has been with Ellingson since 2014, works in charge of government relations and public policy. His primary focus is about representing and protecting landowner rights with an emphasis on water quality and water management. He works with local, state, and federal governments in assisting the establishment of corporate strategies, policies, and plans which are in alignment with government laws and regulations. He has done extensive work. I know he's got a big working group with agriculture associations trying to work with the NRCS and the Fish and Wildlife Service on some flexibility and nimbleness and water management, and hopefully this conversation to the water resource districts and water managers and the state water commission staff that you see participating in the 60 participants will also include water managers in the state in that list of extensive work. So with that, Levi, I appreciate you taking the time to put together a presentation, and so the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Lance and Jack and Julie. I really appreciate the collaboration and the discussions we've had in the last few weeks or month to kind of put this stuff together. And it's, I just really appreciate I don't know if it's an olive branch, but I do like, appreciate the ability to visit with the water board members. And I know I saw several of you that I know quite well, so having you guys on today. Couple things. I'm not an engineer, so if you have engineering and design questions, if I can't answer it, I'm certainly not going to make it up. But I will take it down and I'll follow up with you with our engineering team and make sure you get the right information. And then also, I'm not an attorney, so any of those legal questions, I think Kale is still on. So maybe legal questions, either write them down or put them in the queue, and I defer any legal questions just because I'm not an attorney. And Lance is right. We do hire Rinky Noonan quite a bit throughout the Midwest for their advice. So we are obviously different entities, but we do hire Kale on occasion. So that being said, we'll get going, and if you guys have any questions throughout, feel free to ask them, and I'll try to do this a little quicker. And if you have to jump off, before the end, I'm not going to be offended. So today we're going to talk about Ellingson. Usually when people come through my office, they say, "Holy cow, I had no idea it was this extensive," or we didn't know Ellingson did all this stuff. So I do want to give you a brief Ellingson commercial so you guys really understand all of the different things we do across the country and in different parts of the world. We'll talk history of drainage, which I know you guys are pretty familiar with, but sometimes understanding where we come from might understand why we approach things the way we do. And then that will lead into the Ellingson approach. And there's a list of different things that I'll touch on. At the end, ditch networks is a very big thing I get asked about by water board members individually, how we can make it so we have less fence line politics. I know Kale touched on the legal stuff on that, and I'll just touch a little bit on where my vision is. ADMC is Agriculture Drainage Management Coalition. It's a board that I sit on that manages, it's an association for all the drainage contractors in the Northern Plains, the Midwest, over to the, through the I-states up to New York. So there's a pretty extensive group and things that we're focusing on. So I'll talk about our priorities at the end, and then Ellingson, we've developed some pretty cool technology, and we've done a soft launch on it. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the very end. So who is Ellingson? I'm going to play a brief video for you, and you might find it kind of interesting.
years ago, Ellingson installed its first foot of drain tile. No one could have known that planted a seed that would grow into a leading construction contractor. We are one. One Ellingson. One company. One culture. We work as one. We succeed as one. One commitment to customer success. We are one. Well, our roots are in the field. Today, Ellingson is a respected leader in agriculture, commercial and industrial utilities, and oil and gas applications. And now, more than ever before, consistency is the key to our combined future. Bringing our people, products, expertise, and service together as one will drive success for us. And more importantly, the customers we serve. Which is why we're evolving to address new challenges and make the most of new opportunities. To unify our organization as one team with one set of company goals, one vision of success, one story that simplifies our communications, with one set of expectations for one brand with more power to help our customers succeed. How we show up, in the way we work and do business. Number one. Customers we serve, one who wants value and expertise, and the 5 values that make us one. People driven to help everyone succeed. People who listen, understand, and then build solutions that exceed customer requirements. People who want to be the best, who measure performance and strive for constant improvement. People who innovate and constantly search for a better way in everything they do, who embrace the challenges that come with change. People who stay curious and hold themselves accountable and know how to celebrate our mutual success. It's an evolution driven by what we'd like to be. And by what we'd like to do. And do it across industries and projects. All operating together as one. From agriculture and infrastructure management to engineering and underground utilities, all business is more aligned and prepared for growth than ever before. We're ready with full service, turnkey, global solutions built on decades of practical experience and innovation. Always putting customer needs first, with efficiency, productivity improvements to ensure success now and long term. As one, Ellingson is better aligned to serve our customers. With unmatched customer service, we can solve the problems of today and address the challenges of tomorrow.
We bring diverse skills and experiences organized around one business.
One set of values, one shared commitment to success. One Ellingson. And when we are one, we all succeed.
All right, appreciate that. Sitting through that, our company takes a lot of pride in what we do, and all of the people that work with us, we consider each other coworkers, and the Ellingson family definitely treats us all like that. And so it's a great company to work for, and I'm going to put in a plug quick that we are hiring. So if you know anybody that would like to come here and work, treat them as one of our own, because it is really a great company to work for. So in 1970, Ellingson Drainage was founded, incorporated in 1979. We started doing utility construction services because drainage was done in the spring and done in the fall, and we needed something for the employees to do in the downtime. Directional drill was purchased in 98, and 99 really started that. 2001, the Harwood office was built. So we've been around for about 20 years. Trenchless offerings were done in 2004, cured in place piping expanded in 2010. large diameter drill, which we have on the East Coast primarily, was added 12. And then infrastructure assessment and management. So we can go into, I'll just use a shopping mall, for instance. We go in and camera the pipes, and we can give you a 3D schematic of the entire shopping mall. And if the pipe is bad, we color code it in red. If it's yellow, it means it's going to need some work. And if it's green, it's good to go. And you can click on each pipe and look through, and it'll show you the video of what that pipe looks like. And then we cure it from the inside. And it's pretty cool technology that I didn't even know was possible until I started working here. 2018, we rebranded the entire company as Ellingson. And then 2019, I just want to touch on that a little bit. We acquired a company called DDT. It's an environmental remediation company. So we clean up oil spills, saltwater spills. And then one cool thing that we did recently was we put a horizontal well in Hollywood, California, North Hollywood, because the ground was eroding because of high water table, and these $30 million homes up top that were soon to slough into the ocean. And hopefully the horizontal well has reduced the erosion. But it's crazy what those guys do, and they've got every single letter behind their name, and it's really fun to start asking really technical questions to those guys, because they're really good at, I don't want to say dumbing it down for me, but they can articulate things at your level. So that's cool. We do have over about 300 employees, and as it says, safe construction. We have an incredibly high safety rating, and that comes from our oil and gas division because we're required to, which then we go through our entire company, and we hold everybody the highest regard. So that's something we're very, very proud of. And I don't ever say those specific numbers because I'm one of those people that knocks on wood, but it's pretty good. Here's where our offices are located. We've got obviously Harwood, North Dakota. We've got a couple in the Twin Cities. We've got our corporate office is down in West Concord, just 20 miles west of Rochester, or 20 miles east of Owatonna, depending if you know the area. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we've got an office, and then Stockton, California. We also have a laydown yard in Texas, last time I checked. So we do work all over the country, and I think some of these states can be colored in. I just didn't do that. But really, our guys get to see the world. As you saw in the video, oil and gas, water and wastewater, power and telecom, agriculture, of course, and then commercial industrial work. Put some pictures on there so you kind of understand pipe and rehab. That CIPP, cured in place piping, and that second picture, obviously directional drilling. We see quite a bit of them around North Dakota. Ellingson Infrastructure, Technology and Engineering, that is a newly developed company where those guys are going gangbusters. And then Quick Connect, or one of our guys invented this pull head, and so that goes on the end of a drill, and that's been a really solid product. These pictures are more of the surface examples that we do. Pipe fusing, of course, cured in place piping, we talked about that. Ramming, I think if you guys have been around, you probably know what all this stuff is. Some of our customers, we work for some of the biggest companies in the world. Obviously Anheuser-Busch or Miller Coors, you know them, Crystal. We do a lot of the oil and gas business. Cavendish, Amazon, that's a DDT customer. We did drain tile and some different things for Wonderful, who, you know, you've seen their pistachios probably in every gas station from here to California. And there's some more. We do a lot of federal work with our DDT company. So it's just pretty cool when you start looking at our customer list of people who hire us. Notable partners, the grower associations, as Lance said, we work very extensively working on behalf of the farmers in the Northern Plains on NRCS issues, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and I'm sure most of you water board guys are farmers yourself, so you deal with that. And I have the benefit of working again for the Ellingson family on behalf of the farmers, making it easier for you guys to do what you want to do in your farms and making sure the government isn't overstepping their bounds. So history of drainage. I put John Johnston up there, 1835. He came to the United States and he brought the first tile. And only reason I put him up there is my mom's maiden name is Johnston, so I like to feel that that it's in my lineage. But I also thought it was funny that the first tile in irrigation that was ever discovered, they say is around 8,000, 4,000 BC in Iran, of all places. And of course, the Romans, it's heavily documented that they tiled in 200 BC. And it's just kind of fun to read that history if you're a history buff. Here's a community main being dug, and I believe this picture was in Iowa, right in the early 1900s. And boy, have we advanced what we're doing now. When we talk to a lot of the old guys in the I states, you know, the neighbors all got together, and that's why I'm sharing these pictures. Here's a Boone County, Iowa, right? These aren't hired men. These are the guys that are farming it, and they all just, you know, united and said, wow, we have water issues. Let's get together. And as crazy as the world is, I think some of this stuff we could get back to in working together with our neighbors and instead of fighting all the time. 20-inch, 2-inch drain, again, Boone, Iowa, which is just west of Ames, if you're familiar with Iowa. Arch pipe, this pipe was laid just as you see it in the clay base. The water would just run right down it. Hex pipe is not very common. Sometimes you'll see it dug up, but it's used primarily in Western New York and Northeast Ohio. I give Roger a hard time, Roger Ellingson, the owner of our company, that this is a picture of him digging back in the 60s. Of course, it's not. And then concrete tile, which we actually do dig up here in North Dakota once in a while. Up by Tappan, North Dakota, we've found quite a bit of clay tile. So I don't know if farmers, you know, 7,500 years ago were bringing it in dark and not telling their neighbors about it or what, but steam shovels. If you ever go out to Rolog, I actually think they've got a couple, which is kind of neat, but the advent of the steam shovel started to speed things up. And 1970, the first plastic tile kind of popped in, and I asked Roger one day what it was like to get to the plastic tile after laying clay. And, you know, he says, I was lifting clay tile into a trench, and a salesman came out, flapped out the plastic pipe, and he kicked it in with his foot. From there, they strung it 250-foot coils, and he thought he died and went to heaven, you know, when he was a younger man, and putting it in by hand. That was pretty cool. So obviously, you know what Prinsco pipe is. We do 99% of our business with Prinsco. They're another family-owned company that it's just a wonderful company to work with. So if you haven't, I'd encourage you to call them. For those of you who do tile on your own, it's a great company. So Spiker wheel machine back in the 70s, down in the bottom left corner, and then this Badger plow we owned in the 80s to the mid 90s, and was sold and went down to Windham, Minnesota, and then now it is still in operation in Indiana today, so that's pretty cool. And then the Braun 550 tile plow, that's what everybody has seen up here. It's a very powerful machine, looks like an army tank, and they do a really nice job as well. Spot or random tiling. The I-states had the benefit of having what is now the NRCS, but SCS for many, many years, paying farmers to go and drain those low areas or wet ground. And I'm not going to call them wetlands because I never did a determination on them in the 40s or 50s, but you get my point. So that's what a spot tiling plan looks like. And then here we have the classic pattern tile. 1975, when the plows really started to ramp up, that's when we started pattern tiling everything. You could tell the different directions. This picture on the left was much more recent than 1975. Lift stations. First lift stations were probably built by Ellingson. I know there were a couple others, but really started mass production as tiling ramped up through 2000, and I think Lance mentioned 2011, 2012. That's really when things started kicking off, and I'm sure you see those all over the place. So Drainage 101, I want to play this video for you. It's about 5-6 minutes long. If you've seen it, use the bathroom. But it's an incredibly good video, and I can't do as good of a job explaining Tile 101 as this video does. And Prinsco put this together, and they're coming out with another version here soon, so that should be pretty cool. And Julie, I don't know if you can turn it up or not.
The sound was a little light last time, Levi, so you can maybe put your speaker closer to the device or something.
Let's see.
Welcome to Agricultural Water Management 101 by Prinsco. There is no question that the most uncontrollable element in farming is weather. Subsurface water management gives producers an opportunity to regain some control from unpredictable weather. An effective water management system is essential for crops to attain their full potential and maximum yield. It allows for proper soil composition and optimal root development, maximizing plant strength and nutrient uptake. The key visible features of a water management system include the outlet, a ditch or stream to carry excess water away, and a buffer strip to shield the stream from overland soil erosion. As rain enters the system, it is what happens below ground that makes a water management system so valuable. The large diameter pipe is called a main. The job of the main is to take excess water from the field and direct it out of the system. The smaller pipes are called laterals and form a pattern or grid across the field, collecting excess moisture and carrying that water to the main. Laterals are usually spaced 30 to 75 feet apart and are buried 2.5 to 4 feet deep depending on soil type. The main is always deeper than the laterals as water moves through the system using gravity. Water flows to the lowest point, which is always the outlet. Water enters the laterals through small perforations or slits in the pipe. The perforations are designed to allow water in and to keep soil out. From a side view, we see the main. Note, the water table is just below the main. A properly designed water management system does not take all of the water out of the soil. It manages the water table to keep it at a constant depth, which is usually 3 to 5 feet below the soil surface. By managing the water table, the optimal soil profile for plant growth is achieved. The soil profile is the area from the soil surface to 2.5 to 4 feet below. This area is where nutrients are taken up by the plant roots. Ideal soil properties in the profile are 50% minerals and organic matter, 25% air, and 25% water. A cross-section of the main reveals the laterals entering, allowing the water to flow downhill into the main. As rain begins above ground, the soil profile is able to accept water from the surface as it filters down. Once the water reaches the perforated laterals, excess water enters the system and begins flowing to the main. Compare that with the same field without the water management system. Typically, the water table is higher, with less area available to absorb water. When the soil reaches full saturation and rain continues, excess water cannot soak into the ground. The only place for excess water to go is to flow over land to the lowest point, carrying with it valuable soil and nutrients. This will cause erosion of surface soil, dumping sediment and nutrients into the ditch or stream. A water management system allows more water to be filtered through the soil and less risk of soil erosion. As the soil profile reaches full saturation, the rain ends, excess water filters down to the laterals, into the main, and out of the system through the outlet. This reduces the amount of water in the soil profile. It is important to recall for optimal plant health 25% of the soil profile should be air. If not, plant roots will be deprived of necessary oxygen and cause plant death. As excess water leaves the main into the ditch or stream, the soil profile continues to take in needed oxygen. Plant roots continue to grow, pushing deeper as the water table retreats. It is critical for young plants to establish deep roots early in life. If the water table is at or near the surface for an extended period of time, plant roots have no need to grow deeper seeking water. Instead, they form shallow root systems. As the growing season progresses, extended dry weather stresses plants as the shallow roots are unable to turn downward and capture moisture from the retreating water table. By managing the water table, plant roots thrive in an ideal soil profile. Nutrient uptake is maximized and deep roots are established early, benefiting the plant the entire growing season. Inline water control structures are a great addition to a water management system. This unit is installed at the lowest point in the system, usually near the outlet on the main. A water control structure features adjustable stop logs that can be added or removed depending on the time of year and weather conditions. When an extended dry period is anticipated, the stop logs are placed in the structure at a level that will temporarily raise the water table. As water enters the system, it is held in the pipes by leaving additional moisture in the soil profile for thirsty plants. When the system is saturated and the pipes are full, excess water flows over the stop logs and through the outlet. Stop logs can be adjusted to hold water in the system, particularly after planting in the spring and prior to extended dry periods throughout the growing season. If excess water conditions are present, stop logs can be removed, allowing water to flow out of the soil profile, especially prior to spring planting and fall harvest. Managing the soil profile with a water management system has tremendous benefits. It is an affordable tool producers can use to directly impact the health of their crops during the growing season. Keep in mind the golden rule of drainage. Drain only that which is necessary to ensure trafficability and crop production, and not one drop more. For more information, you can visit us at facebook.com/Prinsco Inc., on Twitter at Prinsco Inc., or on the web at prinsco.com.
So as you saw in that video, which again, I'll compliment Prinsco for putting together that, you can't say it any more simply than that. But controlled drainage is something I believe in and this company believes in. Being able to manage that water, and as they said, don't drain a drop more. And yes, we do put in gravity outlet systems, and that's based on the landowner's decision. But most of our stuff, especially in the valley where it's flat, we recommend control structures, just because the ditches are wet all the time. And if you guys understand it, or maybe it is kind of complicated sometimes, ditches actually act as a tile line, right? So some of these deep ditches that we dig, the reason they're wet is because the water table is that high. And so often we'll, different parts of the country, when we do these big ditch projects, we will come in and lay tile on the outside and inside to try to shore up the water from entering them so they do dry out, and then you don't have some of the cattail issues as frequently. So AgriDrain is the most popular company. These boxes that you do see, they're another Iowa company that we work with quite extensively. So they are coming out with an automated one. I believe actually they're already starting with an automated control structure, so you can use it a lot easier. It's just training and working with the farmer so that he gets better at using it and managing it and doesn't harm his crop unintentionally. I know you guys have seen this slide before, and if you haven't, NDSU has done studies over the years, and one of the biggest things that doesn't get enough recognition is planting date. So yes, it's wet, and if you tile, planting date is almost everything, right? And so a lot of these studies, sometimes you see tile versus no tile, and it doesn't show a big impact. But if you ask the question, well, what was the planting date? Oh, we planted them on the same day. why'd you plant them on the same day if it's tile versus no tile? Well, that's the only day the farmer could come and put it in. And that's not very fair to the tiled farm versus the non-tiled farm, just because if you're going to plant them on the same day, do it when the tile's ready and not. And so that's my one gripe about a lot of these studies. And if people don't ask that question, we don't know. So I'm just putting it out there. But 25% of your yield could be gone with 2 days of waterlogged roots. And then you see this on the right side of the picture was, if you're planting between the 2nd and the 10th of May, you're already losing 7% of your crop. And if you're planting in June, there goes another 25%. So just kind of an interesting impact there. This article was written by the Caterpillar Times in 1917. And it talks about that air circulation. The picture in front of us is Jerry Nordick's farm. I don't know if you guys have heard of him or them. Over Discovery Farms, just east of Fargo down the interstate. Jared sent me this picture, tile versus no tile, and the black dirt is where the tile is. So this is facing south. It's the bottom end of the field. Of course, water moves from east to west on their side of the river, and they did the 80. Well, this talks about air circulation, as you saw in the video. The minute you lower the water table in the ground, you draw in air, takes its place, the air is warm, right? And so I think you guys get it, but it's pretty interesting. We get pictures and Snapchats and texts and tweets and very frequently of people in their systems when they're working at their maximum performance. Throwing in grass waterways, this is not something we see very often here in North Dakota. It's something I wish we'd see more of, because this is really landowners working together. This guy's on the bottom end, and the top field, out by those trees, the water runs naturally this direction, and these grass natural waterways, they don't farm them, right? And so yes, it does cut your quarter in half, but they're working together. As you can see, these waterways across these nice, beautiful quarters. Yeah, it's a little more work to go around them, but it is farmers working together to move the water and not fighting each other, saying, I'm drowning him out, or he's drowning me out. He's dumping his water on me. But again, this is over 100 years worth of collaboration and understanding. Next is water inventory, impact of peak flows, and as you see, the four main soil types. The rain events are on top and representative of the flows in a drained and undrained scenario. The amount of water that moves is exactly the same. I can't believe how many times people say, well, you're creating more water. Well, if we were creating water, I probably wouldn't be on this. I'd be living in the Bahamas and, going, you know what I'm saying. So tile runs longer. That is true, right? With your tile, you don't have the rush of water like you do in an undrained scenario. The drained scenario gives you the ability to gradually release the water in a controlled environment. So looking at this, you see, look at the peak flow on field A where it's loam, right? Spikes right up, and look at the tiled scenario. Now you're going to have that water last, a few days longer, but you're not having that big whoosh of water as we see, especially here in the valley and actually where I'm from in Devil's Lake. My buddy Jeff, he probably looks at these graphs and laughs and knows exactly what I'm talking about. But I thought it's time we start understanding exactly how these flows work. And so if anybody has questions on that, we can go back to it. Saturated soils, when soils are saturated, the only place for the water to go is off. And I think we see that more and more. Yesterday, Keith, he said in the last 3 years, I would say summer floods have been more impactful. And I think he's right. From what I see where I live in Argusville, 15 miles north of Fargo now, we're getting those more frequent heavy rains with dry spells in between. I think the month of June, I don't know if we had a drop of water. We were below average. And then in one and a half nights, we had a couple inches of rain that took us over average. And all June, it didn't rain. In one night, it got wet. So it's really interesting what people are seeing and saying, and it's falling in line with what we're talking about. Joel Ransom, NDSU Extension agronomist, he had this on a slideshow, and I thought it was appropriate. The water holding capacity of soil is one of the most argued things in our industry, whether it's academia, whether it's us in corporations, whether it's maybe you guys in water boards. I think you guys probably talk about it. But this is an NDSU slide, inches versus into feet, and you look at the clay, 1.2 to 1.5 inches per foot. That's a significant amount of water. I think an inch of water over an acre is 27,000 gallons, and that's quite a bit. Now you'd start doing that 2, 3, 4 feet. There is water holding capacity in soil. Things that I would like you guys to think about, or maybe even people in Fargo when they drive by a lift station in March. No, we're not planting in March. And if you see a tile pump running, the odds that it's draining anything out of the soil profile is very low. Typically what happens is a farmer forgets to turn off a tile pump, and then of course somebody drives by it, snaps a picture, sends it to Valley News Live saying farmers are flooding Fargo and it's drain tiles problem. Well, the amount of tiled fields versus untiled fields in North Dakota is probably, I know I've given you this number before, somewhere between 4 and 5% of the valley is tiled, and less than 1% of drainable acres in North Dakota are tiled. So should I take it personally? Probably not, but I do not like when city commissioners call into KFGO and say, oh geez, all these farmers are flooding Fargo, we got to make a law to turn off tile pumps. Well, all it's doing is really regurgitating surface water that's running into the tank. Should the pumps be shut off? Absolutely. They leave them on to drain them as far into winter as they can. But once the ground's froze, you guys know it. You're not draining out the soil profile. So it's more of an emotional thing than a scientific or mathematical. But I just digress. So other things I want you guys to think about is what is the CFS of a field surface ditch, right? We drive by them all the time. We see the scrapers out there in the fall. How about a road ditch? How much water is a road ditch moving? And then of course a legal drain. 3/8 inch coefficient is a standard that we hover around, and that's about 1.6 CFS. So if you've got a legal drain that's 175 CFS, that's a pretty big difference. And are you contributing to that ditch while you're tiling? Now, I personally do believe that you should back down your pump or shut it off until a week or so before you're intending to plant. But those are things that we as contractors, we as water boards, or you as water boards, and then grower groups, is we can start educating more and getting people to really understand how to manage water and not drain it. Those are things that are going to correct themselves. So do I believe there needs to be legislation or rules within a county? Not typically. Sometimes it's just a conversation or a phone call saying, hey, can you shut off your pump? And most will oblige. And if they don't, well, then that's why laws get written. So those are just conversations we can have down the road. Healthier crops do use more water. If you want 200 bushel corn, it's probably going to take you 22 inches of rain. And are we getting 22 inches of rain? Maybe not. But if we can hold a lot of that water in the soil profile, if the roots aren't saturated, you might get there. So let's see, water holding capacity. We've talked about that. And then earth, your ground does act as a filter, right? So you have far less phosphorus coming out of a tile pipe than you do overland. And sediment isn't leaving the field as it would with a surface ditch. And yes, there is a nitrate issue, but we'll get into that and have that conversation. So this farm is right south of my house, south of Argusville. And if you've heard of the Cass County Pilot Project or Red River Basin Commission pilot project, this farm itself has several surface ditches on it, and it doesn't concern me living on the east side of it because I've seen it over 10 years, but it does fill up road ditches and backs into his field. And you can see the 7th and the 15th. And the reason I know this is because I took pictures as I'm out running my dog, and here's the bottom end of that farm that actually runs south to this legal drain. And here's, a couple days apart, and it just showing, I know you guys see this stuff all the time, but I think it does give a good explanation of how those things happen. April 2nd, obviously our neighbor did not get the corn off, and I personally think that that all that corn did hold back a lot of water. I think there was 1,000 acres within 1.5 miles, 2 miles of my house that had corn on it. It was unbelievable the amount of every quarter it seemed had corn standing this spring. And then again, April 12th, May 6th, and then by May 6th, he had gotten it off. He had gotten the corn off, and then we had another snowstorm in between there with significant snowfall, so that's why it's wet again. Now I am not, it may have sounded like I'm ripping surface drainage. I am not. If you don't have drain tile, you have to get into your farm. That's what farmers do. They grow food, and they need to be able to get into it. But once subsurface water management or drainage is installed, land leveling begins, and farmers realize that, and we try to get them to move up and shoring up some of those surface ditches. You don't need them all once you're tiled. And the reduction of surface ditches reduces the erosion, keeps soil and sediment in your field. It allows more opportunity for reduced till, strip till, cover crops. We hear it all the time. I tried to do cover crops, it's too wet. And then once they tile, they can get in. And again, I wish these guys would send them to all these pictures to me in files instead of Snapchat, so I can use them for presentations like this. And I believe it was Walsh County, NDSU did a study, and Walsh County has lost 18 inches of topsoil since the 80s. And we just have to figure out wind erosion, water erosion, and we have the best farmland on the planet, and we got to keep it that way. So we will go next. So Ellingson approach, I got another video here, which we did a couple years ago. So bear with me.
Since the early 1900s, farmers and landowners have been tiling agricultural land. Next to the soil pH level, proper drainage may be the second most important factor in determining crop quality and yield. Surprisingly, installing drain tile hasn't changed much in the last 50 years and has often been treated as little more than a service transaction between farmers and tiling contractors. With the tile placement decisions based on the wettest areas of a field, there wasn't much conversation taking place about return on investment or quantifying which fields might benefit the most from drain tile. Now, there is a better way. At Ellingson, our approach to water management and design combines an age-old practice with modern agronomic science, engineering, and water management technology to help our customers make smarter, more calculated drainage decisions. Our services and tools will help you analyze field-specific information and ultimately make more informed water management decisions. We do this by using our trademark approach, H2Monemy, where soil type, weather history, crop productivity, drainage classification, and crop type are assessed to quantify risk and determine the rate of return on your drainage investment. Believe it or not, it may not always be the field with obvious wet areas that should be tiled first. The water management specialists and engineers at Ellingson will combine science with years of practical drainage experience to help you compare and prioritize your drainage needs across all of your fields, and then provide you with a detailed drainage assessment and design plan that quantifies ROI and can be taken straight to your lender. With Ellingson, our primary goal is to ensure customers always have the most effective drainage plan for their specific farm and soil types, backed by the latest technology and water management practices, regardless of who installs the tile. We'll provide you with installation-ready designs, maps, and cut sheets when you're ready to do the work. Life on Earth depends on water. It is our most valuable natural resource. Plants need this vital liquid to flourish and reach their peak potential. But even the most essential element must be well managed. At Ellingson, we bring the sciences of water management and agronomy together, combined with knowledge from nearly a half-century of drainage experience, to help farmers make better and more profitable water-related decisions. Ellingson, a smarter way to manage the water on your land. To find out more about water management and how drainage can work for you, go to ellingsoncompanies.com.
All right, so that, as it said, whether it's us that does the work or another contractor, I can assure you that we kind of live by the saying that Prairie St. John used to, and it was, if you don't get help from us, get help somewhere. And I truly believe that's a motto within this company where if you have questions, if you've hired somebody else, if you need some advice, call us, because we want it to get done right, and we want the farmer to get what he's paying for. We want the contractors to be safe, so we do help out other contractors if they run into a problem. And again, the phone's always open. So I just want to reiterate that. These are Gold Rush potatoes up in Walsh County. They had 3.5 inches of rain. What was that, July 2nd? And this is the farm design, the pattern tile that it's on, and those are the potatoes.
Nelson, North Dakota.
So you guys have all seen potatoes, I'm sure. Controlled drainage. We obviously do a lot of lift stations. Some guys call them trophies, and I I don't blame them because it's hard to see tile unless you know where the outlet is. And when you purchase something and you're proud of it, I understand why they call them trophies. That's a quadruple pump that I believe is draining a section out in North Carolina. Really, really cool stuff that we did there. And then a lot of places it's really expensive to get power in North Dakota. There's quite a few places where it's a couple miles to get power. And so we do build generators and tanks and and set them on platforms right next to lift stations. So we have eliminated the I don't have power excuse if people want to go that way. But obviously, since the valley is so flat, a lot of tile didn't happen until the lift station came to town. So drainage coefficient. This is a huge deal. What I want people to understand is that you should not do a blanket regulation on drainage coefficient. I know there's been watersheds in the past, specifically Minnesota, for a few years had a drainage coefficient recommendation or rule that nothing over a quarter unless on a special permit. And sugar beets, dry edible beans, potatoes need at least a 3/8, but should probably be at a half-inch coefficient depending on the soil type, because they don't like to be wet. You can probably get away with a 1/4-inch coefficient depending on topography and soil types on corn and soybean rotation, but I wouldn't personally. I'd always go to a 3/8 or at least have a conversation with your agronomist, with the tile contractor, and see what the best bang for the buck is. But you got to make sure you're getting what you're paying for. And if you're growing specialty crops, the water board has to understand that when you're putting in your tile application and why you want a larger drainage coefficient. This is another video that we did that's good at explaining drainage coefficients.
Installing a subsurface drainage system is the best way to protect your crops from being damaged by heavy rainfall and excessive soil moisture. But first, you need to know how your drainage coefficient impacts the performance of your drainage system. A properly designed drainage system could make or break your crop investment. The amount of time it takes to drain excess water off your field is directly related to your drainage coefficient. It's simple. You're the amount of excess water your drainage system can remove in a 24-hour period. Drainage coefficient. Your drainage system should be capable of removing excess water from the upper portion of your crop's active root zone within 48 hours of a heavy rainfall. For most upper Midwest farmland, this means draining 3/8 of an inch of excess water per day. In other words, the recommended drainage coefficient for most upper Midwest farmland is 3/8 of an inch. Know your drainage coefficient and harvest bigger yields. It's February in Farmville. Yep, I got my drainage system installed after harvest last November. Ellingson Drainage designed and installed it at a 3/8 inch drainage coefficient. I'm gonna sell a lot more corn, and I didn't have to buy any more land. Gonna buy a new truck on harvest time this year. Yeah, I got a drainage system installed too. It's a 1/4-inch DC, way cheaper. Yeah, we'll see. It's April in Farmville. The winter snow has melted. The field on the left has a drainage system with a drainage coefficient of 3/8 of an inch. The field on the right has a drainage system, but it's only built to a 1/4-inch DC. The field on the right drains better than it did before, but it's still not ready for planting. Maybe in a week or so. Or to put it another way, there'll be a few less bushels per acre at harvest. It's June in Farmville. They're getting what they call a gully washer, 3.5 inches in one day. The crops on the left seem to be doing well. The ones in the field with the 1/4-inch drainage coefficient, not so much. It's August in Farmville, and it's a scorcher. Hasn't been a drop of rain for weeks, and it doesn't look to get any better soon. You'd think a drainage system wouldn't help now, but the crops on the left have strong roots that were encouraged to grow deep into the soil profile. The crops on the right are just getting baked in the soil that got compacted when June's heavy rains didn't drain fast enough. It's October in Farmville. The field on the left is ready for harvest, and it's gonna be a bumper crop. The field on the right, well, there's always next year. It's December in Farmville. I don't get it. We both had drain tile installed on our farms. Why were you able to plant sooner and produce better yields than me? My farm was better than it has been in the past, but doesn't compare to yours. Yup, the 3/8 inch coefficient made all the difference. My field produced at its maximum capacity. Like I said, My field produced better than it has in the past, but saving a few bucks up front looks like it's going to cost me in the long run. I really missed an opportunity to have my field produce maximum yields. Should have called Ellingson Drainage. This has been an Ellingson Drainage presentation. For more information, visit www.ellingsondrainage.com.
So Lance, I should pause to see if there's any questions. I know we're pushing up 15 minutes before lunch, but if there's anybody out there that has any questions up to this point, or I can keep rolling and save them for the end, whatever you'd like to do.
Levi, there have been a couple of questions, but maybe we should let you get through it so that we can don't cut you off and push it into the lunch hour, like you said.
Okay.
So I'm writing them down.
Yeah, and I don't see any popping up with my slideshow up, so you just let me know when I should stop. Okay.
We'll do.
All right, specialty drainage. So we're used to a lot of crops up here. North Dakota, I think we produce a larger variety than almost any other state. California comes to mind that has a larger variety of crops as we do. But I just want you guys to understand other work that we do. So this is a cranberry bog that we do in Wisconsin, and they flood irrigate, and in between, and that's how cranberries work. But it's a cute little tiling machine that we use for that type of tiling. And then here this winter we did thousands of acres of tiling for a citrus farm down in McAllen, Texas, way down on the Texas-Mexico border. And this is for citrus farms, and the ground is very dry, but this is almost 100% because it's so salty. So this California company hired us to move over to Texas after we did a bunch of work for them in the central coast of California last fall. So as we weren't able to get into the farms up here in North Dakota because everybody had corn out still, we moved a bunch of crews down to California and did our fall work there, and then as I said, moved the trucks and equipment from California over to Texas. California, we do a lot of almond farms. That's kind of been a hotbed lately, so it's just pretty cool on the stuff we're able to do. Climate change was brought up yesterday or the day before. Dr. Hunt talked about it, and without being political, or the reason, I think we have to agree that the climate changes. And Lake Agassiz used to be 600 feet deep. Now we're farming it. Life happens, and we need to be cognitive of that. And then how are we going to react as you as decision makers and water boards, and us as contractors and our agronomists and our academics at Iowa State or NDSU at UND? How are we going to continue to feed the world so that our kids and grandkids are left with the best possible chance to keep feeding the world? And are we prepared right now? Are we going to soon be prepared? And again, Keith's quote there, in the last 3 years, summer floods have been more impactful. That goes back to the coefficient video, right? If you're getting 3 inches of rain, can your system take it and remove that water slowly and not right off the top? Subsurface irrigation is a very fun topic for me to talk to because it's just kind of like mind-blowing, putting water back into the ground. A few of those projects that we have done, we've done a few in North Dakota, one up by Wolford, and there's a couple others, but really, really cool stuff. And we've done a really large project out in North Carolina. But subsurface irrigation, the ability not only to benefit from conventional drainage, but control the water table and pump the water back in to irrigate through drain tile. Tile spacing needs to be twice as tight to sub-irrigate versus conventional, right? So the water will, or wick, let's say you're on 40-foot centers, and the water wicks 20 feet. Well, then if you want sub irrigation, you have to put splitters in right at 20 feet because it'll only percolate 10 feet out, and depending on your soil type. So another thing to understand is that to have subsurface irrigation, you have to have a higher perch water table or clay base. So this is really starting to take off for a number of customers, and it's really expensive, right? It's probably double what it costs to tile something. North Carolina, the subsurface irrigation project, it was a local potato farmer who's got some farms out in North Carolina and Gum Neck, right on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. So they do 2 crops of potatoes every year, and during some of those seasons, or a couple of those seasons, it gets dry. And so it's a fully automated drainage system. We engineer it, we install it, and we flew out there last April to look at it. This retention pond was built, as you see on the left side of the picture. It was built so all the drainage water flows into it, keeps it full. There is an overflow if you get a bunch of rain, where it goes down a series of ditches and then out to the ocean. So it's pretty cool system, and they're learning as much as we are with this project, because as the videos have said, and you guys understand, it's not like flipping on the switch and all of a sudden you drain that soil profile. It takes days to get that down. And if you've got your system sub irrigating and you're filling up that soil profile, and all of a sudden a storm is predicted to hit in a week, you need to shut your system down and start draining that back out, because if that storm does build and gives you an inch or 2 inch and you're at your capacity without saturating your roots, you're going to have some major issues. So it takes you have to be part-time farmer, part-time meteorologist, and just try to outthink the storm, which is easier said than done. Water quality, number one thing facing agriculture today, in my opinion. I travel the country, and it's the number one conversation, whether we're in Ohio talking about Lake Erie or the other Great Lakes, Iowa, Missouri, down on the coast, talking about hypoxia, talking about Lake Winnipeg. We're talking about your neighbor downstream who's concerned about salts. We're talking about your neighbor downstream who's concerned about phosphorus or nitrogen. Water quality is something that we cannot ignore, in my opinion. So in 2018, Ellingson and Prinsco, we got together and we made a commitment to work together to tackle these issues facing agriculture, and it is water quality. And that's something the grower groups we will be engaging, and I know everybody's doing kind of their own thing. But as Lance said, we do have a what we call a prairie pothole water group with everybody who works in agriculture and has water concerns, so we can all touch base. And it's not a formal organization by any means, but we do open the door to have conversation, and encourage any of you folks that would like to be part of that conversation or have issues that you guys, who are majority farmers as well, have your voices heard, so we can start opening the dialogue and collaborating on what's the best route for the state of North Dakota, what's the best route for the Northern Plains. How do we lead the world on what we're talking about, right? We have a blank canvas, and we have the best opportunity to show the world how to farm, and I feel like we do that in every other way. So why not bring water quality and water management into the conversation? This is a denitrifying wetland. These things are so awesome. This picture on the left used to be farmed, and now it's filled up as a wetland, and it's about 18, I think 24 inches deep at its deepest. It's just northwest of Ames, Iowa. In the picture we're looking at is the inlet of the wetland, or where the tile and then the surface runoff comes from. And there's significant amount of acreage that this watershed is dumping into. So this wetland itself is, geez, I think it's close to 10 acres, and then there's another 15 or so of cattails and different vegetation that are helping clean up this water. So these wetlands in Iowa, they're treating 150,000 acres of wetlands with these denitrifying wetlands. I call them Crumpton wetlands because Dr. Crumpton from Iowa State is really the brain power behind it. And they're really cool. And I think that if us in agriculture can start placing these wetlands, and I think some of us are going to have to lead by example and prove they work, but I think this is a great opportunity to make the wildlife people kind of happy. When we toured this, there was a beaver out there, many birds. There were birds of prey in the trees, as you'll see in the next video. The trees weren't planted, they were just natural. I understand that NRCS or environmentalists don't like trees around wetlands because there are birds of prey and different predators that will eat the ducks and geese, minus the guys with shotguns. So I'll take this next few second video just pans the wetland, but these wetlands only need to be at 0.5 to 1.5% of the watershed. And when I asked Dr. Crumpton and Dr. Helmers from Iowa State, you know, what about phosphorus? And they said, we can engineer a wetland to do anything. And they said, well, why aren't these taking off more? And I think reading in between the lines of what they were saying is a lot of people don't want to enhance drainage, and something like this will enhance drainage. And but we'll work through some of those issues, and we'll see if these ever come to fruition. So here's the east side of the, or west side of the wetland, as you see the trees in the back, and there's the farm. That guy, he owns this wetland. The guys upstream from him purchased this area, so they all paid him. Well, I should say not leased. They leased the ground, and then he has full hunting rights, and so he actually was able to take his wife and children and grandkids on an Alaskan cruise by charging the people from Ames, Iowa to come and hunt this wetland during duck and goose season, which is also pretty cool. So they leased the ground from him, they took it out of production, and then he retained all the hunting rights. It was so awesome. Again, here's the entrance or the inlet to the wetland. And then what's holding all that water back is this huge steel plate. And so if you get a big rush of rain or significant amount, it just overflows, right? It's part of how it works. So some of that water won't get treated if you get a big heavy rainfall, but as the water comes in, it's treated. And then this picture was the creek downstream. And so I wanted you to see the comparison between the algae blooms in the wetland itself, and then how clean that water is downstream. And if anybody ever wants to go down there, I'd be happy to take you and really look into these, because I think it's just a win-win with agriculture and the environment and wildlife. Bioreactors, they're very popular. If they're part of the problem with bioreactors is they got to be really big and they're kind of expensive. So I know there's cost sharing out there, and it's wood chips, and so the bacteria, removes the nitrates, and these things are really cool, and they do a really good job of removing nitrogen. Let's see. And then saturated buffers. You know, they store water within the soil profile, and then diverting tile water into shallow laterals, and then when they run over the control structure, and then they go into your stream or ditch, and then flow downstream. And again, it's added cost, so getting these to be built more is you need some sort of cost sharing, because the benefit's there, but it's an added cost to the producer. And then flow reduction. Reducing flow is a huge point. And back to that Prinsco Drainage 101 video, drain all that you need to, but not a drop more. If you can manage your water table and understand your lift station, and the more you do it, the better you get. Leaving water in the soil profile will allow your roots to come and use that and use nitrate, right, before it flows downstream. And so lift stations need to be used as tools, just as you use a sprayer or a combine. You can do some really cool things for your farm, taking a little more time and really understanding the flow and the math behind what you need to do in root depth and where you're at. So we're part of the exciting news I'm going to share at the end or hint towards you has a lot to do with this. Tile economics. The inputs I put in here were I think they were last year. I just took a certain day and went to Arthur's website and put a lot of this stuff in. So what I'm going to show you, I'm going to say this a couple times so you understand, but drainable acres come from Web Soil Survey. Drainable land is based on the drainage classes: very poorly drained, somewhat poorly drained, moderately well drained. We have a proprietary index that our company developed with a group of ag and biosystem engineers. Most of them are out of NDSU that have worked with us, a couple from U of M. Extra revenue is determined by taking increase in yield per acre, the average bushels an acre for a crop, and multiplying it by the percentage of a yield increase. We found the price increase per acre by multiplying the increase per yield per acre by the price of the crop. So, sorry, I'm just trying to read my notes on the side. And then we finally multiplied the price per acre by the total drainable acres, the crop price, and then the average yield, which was all found on NASS at USDA. So I just picked Trail County. I had our people run the numbers on Trail County. And so with the drainable acres, not assuming that there's any tile in the ground, which there is, but just assuming that none has been tiled. And this does not include salt, okay? This does not include salty ground. This is strictly based on excess moisture. And what we came up with is an extra $51 million, almost $52 million for Walsh County farmers if they tiled the entire county. Based on those prices from last year. I didn't update it to today or anything. But that comes to $114 per drainable acre increase in Trail County. That's a significant amount. And that's why I think you guys understand why so many people are interested in tiling, or why we're so busy all the time, because it works and it shows up on their balance sheet, and it's a no-brainer for the bankers. So broke them out into western versus eastern counties. Obviously, the west is a lot drier, less hydric soil, but there's still 20% of the 22% of the acres in Web Soil Survey are listed as drainable, and 56% of the tillable land in the eastern side of the state is 56%. So at the very bottom, you can see 13% ROI, right? And even 7%, which, you'd be happy if your stockbroker gets you that. So again, it just shows why farmers are so interested in tiling, and we have hundreds of millions of dollars of tile plans in our servers that someday these guys want to do. So it's kind of exciting for us for that. This thing is something the USDA came out with a few years ago, 2014, and it's showing the amount of prevent plant for soybean acres. And so I sent this over to our developers and our GIS team, and they said, can we get some more accurate recent data? And they said, sure. And so we worked with some friends in Washington and got these numbers. And this is a heat map that our GIS team put together of where all the PP dollars are going. And so I just had them do North Dakota. We'll end up doing the entire country after this project. But you can see North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota are the hottest. California's a little red because the crops are so valuable, and then they have multiple growing seasons. So some of our counties are $100 of PP average per acre. They're in the 400s per acre PP. And then Texas, you've got some specialty crops down there. Missouri and Illinois are dark, mostly because Missouri has a lot less tile, and then Southern Illinois, they got hit with some stuff in the last year, so that's why that's showing up. So then when we zoom in, it shows each county, and you can see, Cass, Barnes, Stutzman, Lemoore, Dickey, Grand Forks, a lot of those are darker. And then out west, right? So on average, you're looking at $14 million in PP. So then you zoom in, and that breaks it down to about $149 average in North Dakota. And then if you zoom in even farther, we broke it down per county. So Grand Forks County is averaging $121 per acre for prevent plant. Trail County 119, and then you get west Steele where you got some lighter ground, and then Gregg's down to 79 and Nelson 54. Now part of that is the crops. A lot of that, they have a lot more salty ground, especially up Nelson Ramsey area. I don't have to tell any of you that live there, but it looks like salt flats at sometimes. So going from there, my friends at ADMC put this slide together for me, and they used RMA data, and this is corn, soybeans, and sugar beets, and it shows you from 2009 to 18 that excess moisture has been predominantly the reason that we have these indemnities, and then drought 17, 18 was a big reason, 13, both were reasons. So that stuff happens. And then I asked them to break out, I call them the big five of North Dakota: corn, potatoes, soybeans, sugar beets, and wheat. And we were kind of mind blown. So we followed up with RMA to make sure their data was correct. And that's a pretty big loss that is not hitting Main Street, right? It's not hitting Devil's Lake Main Street. It's not hitting New Rockford. It's not hitting Botno. It's not hitting Minot. And we all know that as farmers, we got a buck, we like to spend it. And this is kind of depressing if you look at it. Ditch networks. Kale talked about ditch networks. I'm a huge fan of ditch networks because it takes away some of the pain once it's built of water going by your house, your farm. And I want to compliment Moore Engineering, Cass County Water Boards for seeing this, and obviously the farmers themselves that built this. And I don't know if everybody has seen it, and I'm not going to go too deep into what this Northern Cass pilot project is, but it's 16,000 acre watershed. As you see, the bottom end of the watershed, they all voted the 50% to pay, and my house is right in the northeast corner of that watershed. And so I have friends all the way down. And my friends on the very west side are benefiting from those guys on the east side for paying for it. And I give them a little hard time here and there. In Minnesota, as Cale said, right, the percentages are a lot smaller. And if you're receiving benefit, you should be paying into it. And that's, I guess, how I feel. But I would love to see more ditch networks in North Dakota. Our engineering firms are quite capable of designing them, and once those get done over the years, hopefully we start losing that fence line political issue, because we're all in this together. We all live here. We all drink the same water. We breathe the same air. We go to the same schools, and we got to put down the hatchets and start working together. Here's a group in County Maine. It's one of the most common things I hear from township boards or members and county board members. Like, how do we have the conversation about group mains? And group mains are expensive, right? If you bury 52, 60-inch pipe, 48-inch pipe, and then have people start tiling into them, it's going to be expensive. But as one water board member said to me, well, it's not going to seem very expensive in 100 years. And I have to agree. I know there's a lot of rural development grants, USDA things, where the mechanisms are there. If we all got together and lobbied our congressional delegation saying, let's build some wetland banks, let's put some ditch networks in, let's move water, let's manage it. I think between you guys and corporate America and our landowners and our grower groups, I really think this is something that we could achieve if we all just sat down and talked about the way it should go. And there's going to have to be some folks giving in a little, right? And maybe everybody has to give a little to make something like this happen. But I think it really would move us forward as an agriculture community. Here's a legal drain that was built here last winter, and I guess to add on to this is there's a lot of counties or watersheds where people feel the water has nowhere to go. And I look at Devil's Lake growing up there, right? It's a basin, it's a closed basin. But then when you add lift stations to the east and the west end, all of a sudden now you're lifting the water up and out. And we've been doing that in Holland for thousands of years, right? They farm the seabed, right? And they lift the water up and out, and that's what those huge windmills are for. And if that's something that we need to do or talk about or work together to talk with the state, I think there's ample opportunity to move water and again manage it. ADMC priorities, and I know I'm 15 minutes over, so I'm going to go through these fast. Again, it's water quality, it's conservation, and it's farm production. So obviously North Dakota corn, number one reason, almost, I think it says 62%, is because of excess moisture. Drought is another big reason, almost 20%, and then everything else. Production, environment, and conservation drainage. And I sit on this board with guys from all the way across the I-states in Minnesota, and it's just a fantastic organization. We don't see a lot up here just because Prinsco and Ellingson and ADS, a pipe company they've got a plant in Buxton. I think we're the only 3 members that represent our portion of North Dakota and in Minnesota. Priority drainage practices: drainage water management, subsurface irrigation, bioreactors, saturated buffers, constructed wetlands, 2-stage ditches and oxbows. So that being said, exciting announcements coming soon. There's my contact information. I don't care if you have my cell phone number. I appreciate you call, text. If we have disagreements, pick up the phone and let me know where I'm wrong, or let's just have a conversation about our philosophy or what's going on. There's a lot miscommunication out there. And I think if we start picking up the phone and calling or texting or emailing each other and getting clarification, it puts a lot of that stuff to bed. So as far as the exciting announcements, we are launching a pump application. It's a soft launch right now. We've got a number of our largest customers who have lift stations, have remote monitoring, so they can tell you if their pump is running with their cell phone, right? And it has a list. And once we work out some quirks, hopefully this fall or this winter, when you have your winter meetings, maybe we can show the water board that and some of the other technology we're developing along that, which will help you and your water boards and our customers really understand what's going on and help us all be better at managing our water. So with that, Lance, I let her buck.
Well, thank you, Levi. Thanks for lots and lots of stuff, a lot of very educational videos. Appreciate the time and energy you put into this presentation. And I see we are losing a few people as we did. Well, started you late, and so ran you over the time frame. But appreciate a lot of you folks hanging on. A couple of quick questions that have been sent my way that I can, if I forward or mention them to you now. But I want to thank you first off, in case folks need to leave for lunch plans or similar. One of them is related to you highlighted the denitrification wetland project. I think it was in Iowa. Does that qualify also, or can it be used as a mitigation bank then for any of the wetlands that might be impacted in the drain projects, and so that you get a sort of even added benefit, a place to store the water, remove the nitrogen, and create a wetland for a replacement wetland?
Right. So legally, I would say no, because this denitrification wetland, you would be able to drain and then farm again. With wetland mitigation, pretty much that wetland has to stay that wetland until you replace it somewhere else. And then with that being said, the NRCS does not retain jurisdiction over your denitrified wetland. And Kale can probably give jargon to that, but that's my understanding. When I asked Mary Podol, our state conservationist, I said, if we try to get one of these approved and tested, do you guys then take over jurisdiction or control where we can't do anything with it? And she said no. But I'll leave the like I said, the legal framework to Kale on why that is.
Do we have systems in North Dakota that include water quality treatment systems of any kind, or we're just starting to explore that option?
Not yet, and we're actually exploring a site right now where, again, to hold back water, you've got to get state approval. I think it's over an acre foot that you have to get approval. So once we solidify our location, and then we'll be going to the state water commissioner, state engineer's office to hopefully do a pilot and try it out.
One more question here. One of the videos highlighted the use of stop logs to manage the water level, or the water table level within that drained perimeter or pattern. Is the lift station essentially accomplishing the same task as if there were a grade issue and you could take a stop log out? You just, in the case of the flatter Red River Valley, you use the pump to do that same task?
100%. And that's what's really exciting about having the remote monitoring. Number one, right, you hear about farmers going back to older tractors because there's too much technology in the new John Deere, right? And they can't fix them and they got to call an IT guy. One of the things that we're working on is making sure that these things are very simple to use and understandable. So as we go out, right, and you have a flooding event or a flooding situation, and the water board says, can you please turn off your pumps, for 12 hours, and let's revisit it in 12 hours. That guy will be able to go in and click and shut off his lift stations. But again, part of the problem we're seeing now, it's not because people are just running them. They have a lot of them and they're all over the place, right? So if you have 30 lift stations, you got to go shut them off. You need an army to go do so. And I don't think anybody is being malicious when their pumps are running. It's I forgot to go shut that one off. It spaced my mind. And so we're trying to make that process much easier.
Okay, those are the questions I've got. Julie will open up the phone lines if there's folks who have not been able to weigh in or send a chat message to Levi or myself or to the group. I don't think I missed any questions. If I have, please chat them if you will, but as I also want to be respectful and acknowledging that we've gone over time by half an hour from what we told you we would. Anyone have a question? By way of closing, I think we all agree that we have a communications issue ahead. We certainly are concerned as water managers and water users association, along with agriculture, that there's a perception in sometimes urban areas that that water isn't being managed. And in fact, that's what we all strive very hard to do, is manage the water and make sure it is taken care of expediently, so we can have production agriculture, but also not to have downstream impacts. And so one of the things that we hopefully can really work together on and coordinate is that public education, the public relations, to help those urban dwellers understand that we are managing water, not just getting rid of water. And that's the real compelling, I think, key message that we want to work together on. That agriculture, water managers are all really on the same page, working to identify solutions, quantity and quality wise. So look forward to working with you on that. Barring any other last minute questions, I appreciate all of your time. There's been some questions about the availability of this video. As I said earlier, we will figure out how to put this on a recording available for folks who weren't able to witness, or who want to go back and watch various portions of it. We'll work to get this recording posted on the website. So to both Cale and Levi, on behalf of the Water Resource Districts Association and the Water Education Foundation and the water users, and on behalf of Jack, who I see he's back on again. He's, as I said, not feeling the best today, but thanks for all of you for joining, and thanks for the two of you for presenting.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, everyone.